Welcome to day 47 of 66 and 26. Last Friday, we finished up with the Gospel of John, and now we're moving into another one of the four Gospels, the Gospel of Mark. Now, even though Mark is the second Gospel in the New Testament, as we have the New Testament written in our English translations, it is believed that Mark was actually the first of all of the Gospels to be written, and that Matthew and Luke in particular modeled their Gospels after Mark. Mark is the shortest of all the Gospels, and it is believed that Mark was the first one to tell the story of Jesus' life, ministry, death, and resurrection. And then the other Gospels followed as inspired by the Holy Spirit. The Gospel writers expanded on the Gospel of Mark to tell the full story of Jesus Christ. Mark is one of the three what are known as synoptic gospels. Matthew, Mark, and Luke are known as synoptic gospels. If you think about that word optic, they see. Synoptic means they see the same thing. So if you were to read through Matthew, Mark, and Luke, you would see very similar patterns in the timeline of Jesus' life and ministry. You would see many of the same stories, but each one has uniquenesses. They are very similar, but also unique. And so as we're going through each gospel, I think I'll point out several things that are unique to that particular gospel, beginning today with Mark's gospel in chapters 1 through 3. What you're going to notice about the Gospel of Mark is that he jumps right into the action. Mark is the shortest of the Gospels, as I mentioned, and it very, very quickly gets into the work of Jesus. In Matthew, you get an explanation of the birth of Jesus. In Luke, you get an extended narrative about the birth of Jesus, one we know very well from Christmas. But in Mark, there's no birth narrative. Even in John has an explanation about the beginning of Jesus' ministry, but Mark just jumps right into the action. By verse 9, you're into the temptation of Jesus. By chapter 1, verse 15 verses into the gospel, Jesus is already calling his first disciples to follow him. And then Jesus begins already in chapter 1, driving out demons, healing the sick, and very quickly the word of Jesus's power and blessing the people spreads as after he cast out a demon in the synagogue at Capernaum. And then people are bringing people to Jesus who are sick and paralyzed and demon possessed from all over the region, very quickly coming to Jesus. And then also very quickly you get opposition building from the religious leaders to the ministry of Jesus. And even by the end of chapter 3, you get the family of Jesus, Jesus' own relatives, who are questioning what is going on with this guy. It's almost like he's crazy because he is doing some things that are just out of the ordinary. And Jesus is at the same time displaying his power, but people are not exactly grasping what is going on with Jesus. We as readers know from the very beginning, this is the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, we're told. We know that he is the Son of God and Messiah, but all the people in the story, all the characters in the narrative, if you will, they're trying to figure out, who is this guy? How is it that he has such power? How is it that he teaches with such authority? And yet he's opposed by the religious leaders, and his own family is questioning who he is. Well, we're going to find that confusion and that disorientation about Jesus will continue all the way through the Gospel of Mark. This is one of the uniquenesses about the Gospel of Mark is the author, Mark, wants you as a reader to know who Jesus is, but also to really see this gospel as a mirror that makes you question what you truly believe about God. That's going to be the journey we'll be on over the next several weeks in the Gospel of Mark.